Okay. So welcome everyone to class 56, Bible Prophecy, Israel. We're in the book of Revelation, one of the most incredible books of the entire Bible. And it's one which assumes that you've read and read well your entire Bible beforehand, because it brings everything together into an incredible climax of many, many things. So let's start with Ju. If you could start and read question 1 in English. Today we're going to be studying, reviewing the Great Whore and Mystery Babylon first. So let's go to question 1. Hi, Monica.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Hi, Ju.
Ju, go ahead and please read question 1.
There appears to be 6 or more defining characteristics of the great city, which give us clues to help identify her. What are some?
Very good. Identifier. So the I is a little more open. Instead of identify, it's identify her. And that long word, which is a little bit difficult, but when it's a long word, always try to separate things. And you might realize, oh, the first half is character. All right, because that's okay, that's a separate word. So you make, oh, I've seen that, character. And then you add the, so you go characteristics. Okay, but so it's like, so go slow and you add sort of a familiar word with then a new ending. So very good. Okay, so the question is, what are some of the defining characteristics of the great city? Now, what I've done is I've listed out some of the first verses of Revelation chapter 17, and every verse tends to have a defining characteristic. So why don't we do this? Emily, can you read Revelation 17:1 in English, please?
And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will shew unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters.
Ok. E veio dos 7 anjos que tinham as 7 taças e falou comigo, dizendo-me, vem mostrar-te aí a condenação da grande prostituta que está assentada sobre muitas águas. Okay, so we'll look at that verse and look at, so which do you think is, if there's a defining characteristic in that verse, what is it? And it's like, okay, who is or what's the great city? Meaning, who is the great whore as well? What do you think? Well, in this one, maybe it's the very last part of the verse where it says, the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. And so we go, okay, so this is not a, you know, a figure, a person that sits alone. No, it sits upon many waters. And then we're going to get, and I then jump to Revelation 17:15, just so we can see, okay, the Bible again describes, clarifies itself. And so, Monica, can you please read Revelation 17:15 in English?
Okay. And they said unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues.
Thank you. E disse-me, as águas que viste, onde se assenta a prostituta, são povos e multidões e nações e línguas. Okay, and so that's just a clarification. So we know, all right, so a defining characteristic is that the whore sits upon many waters, and those waters aren't like the oceans of the world. No, that's too literal. And then the Bible actually interprets. So she's actually sitting on peoples, multitudes, and nations and tongues. So we can say she's sitting on many or maybe all nations. So this is like a world domination of some sort. So there we are. We have her, and the defining one defining characteristic is sitting on pretty much all the world, many or all nations. So let's go. Chu, can you read Revelation 17:2 in English, please?
With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants on the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication.
Ok. Com a qual fornicaram os reis da terra e os que habitam na terra se embebedaram como vinho da sua fornicação. Okay, so what do you think, looking at that verse, what might be the main point you take away? What might be a defining characteristic?
Adultery.
Yeah, exactly. So the word fornication is used twice. So that's like, okay, maybe that's it. So we have a defining characteristic there of fornication. Adultery is another good word for it. And so, okay, so a great whore, fornication, it makes sense. But remember, we're looking at, okay, what city and a religious system that comes with that city might they be talking about? And remember, as we studied last time, fornication in this case can be both spiritual fornication and actual. Okay, so and the actual fornication is, and we might look at that in a moment, but or review that in a moment, is a city which has many prostitutes. So let's go now. So Emily, can you please read Revelation 17:3 in English?
So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns.
Thank you. E levou-me em espírito a deserto, e vi uma mulher assentada sobre uma besta de cor de escarlata, que estava cheia de nomes de blasfêmia e tinha 7 cabeças e 10 chifres. Okay, so what do you think there? What do we learn about the woman representing the great city? That's maybe the most important thing to take away from this verse. How about that she's sitting upon the beast? Okay, so now, okay, so she's sitting on waters, but now many waters or many nations, but now that's more specific. She's sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast. And if you're sitting on a beast, then that sounds like you're guiding, leading, in some ways, dominating that beast. So that's interesting. Okay, so Monica, can you please read Revelation chapter 17, verse 4 in English?
Okay. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication.
Okay, very good. You're in a couple of the verbs, past tense, you're pronouncing too much the past tense indicator, the ed at the end. So instead of arrayed, it's arrayed, and instead of decked, it's decked. So you're essentially, the e is silent. It's difficult because then you're pronouncing 2 consonants in a row, which is never easy. But it takes some practice. So, e a mulher estava vestida de púrpura e de escarlata, e adornada com ouro, e pedras preciosas e pérolas. E tinha na sua mão cálice de ouro cheio das abominações e da imundícia da sua fornicação. Okay, so what's the main point you take away from this? Would that maybe a defining characteristic of this image and of the great city?
Extravagance.
Exactly right, Emily. So all these gold and precious stones and purple and pearls and fancy dress, vestments in purple and scarlet color, and a golden cup. And so there's something very extravagant about this image. Okay, so let's go. Ju, can you please read Revelation 17:5 in English?
And upon her forehead was a name written, Mr. Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth.
Ok. E na sua testa estava escrito o nome, Mistério, a Grande Babilônia, a mãe das prostituições e abominações da terra. Okay, so this one, let's do this. So, Emily, can you please read question 2 in English?
How is Rome the mother of harlots?
Okay, because we've discussed this before, why all the characteristics that we've looked at, some of them pertain to some cities. So Rio is a city of 7 hills or mountains. Rio has a lot of prostitution, but there's not the other character. Rio never dominated the world. And I think we just lost Ju, but I think she'll come back in. So, and there's other possibilities, and it's a spiritual city or a city with great spiritual pretension. And so we can think of a Jerusalem, maybe even a Babel or Babylon, but then they don't have 7 hills and, so et cetera, et cetera. So we're pretty much have come to the conclusion that this sounds very much like Rome. But now, so how is Rome the mother of harlots? So do you remember? There's the actual and the spiritual. So if you recall, spiritual, how can one engage in spiritual prostitution? Well, that makes it's like you should be married to someone, but you're not actually, right? And so Rome then says that it's a bride of Christ, but it's one who betrays Christ. So it's really committed to others. And then there's the actual part, and that is, and what we looked at the sad history of so many prostitutes actually, and here Ju is back. So many prostitutes. So let's go to question 3. So Monica.
I'm sorry.
No problem, Ju. Welcome back. So Monica, can you read question 3, please, in English?
Okay. What institution is potentially more morally damaging than prostitution?
Okay, very good. So do you remember last time we quoted a Catholic historian who said, in terms of all the bad things that mankind has created, there's something worse than prostitution. You remember what it is?
Celibacy.
Yep. And that's something we don't think about. It's like, how? That's celibacy. That's worse than prostitution. Well, if you recall, and then let's go to, so Monica, can you please read question, no, you did, so Ju, can you please read question 4?
Yes. How many sexually abused children, thus the French Catholic Church admitted.
Okay, so it's that adverb or sexually. So sex. So you're pronouncing sex as you would if it was a word alone, and then sexually.
Sexually.
Yep, it's difficult. Okay. So do you remember? And this is recent news. This is we're completely recent news. Do you remember how many the French Catholic Church just admitted to with tons of documentation?
330,000.
Yep, that's very sad, but there it is. And their children as well. What a horror. What a horror. And as I mentioned before, if France, which is not the largest Catholic country in the world, has that number, imagine the devastation in Brazil, where I would say maybe it's the hot weather, it's the tropics, I don't know. It may even be worse, right? So if the French priests are so sexually abusive, I don't know, maybe the Brazilian priests were even more so. So just imagine the impact on a society with so much sexual abuse of children by a church. All right, something that the child believes is safe, it's God protected, it's filled with God-fearing people, and they were completely deceived. It's absolutely horrible. So let's go to Emily. Can you please read question 5 in English?
Besides child sex abuse, what other abominations does celibacy encourage?
Okay. So then we only focused on that, but like, okay, so celibacy, and remember we saw the actual prohibition is against marriage, not necessarily sex. The Bible says sex outside of marriage is sin, but what the Catholic Church really came down hard is, okay, no marriage for priests. So what other abomination does this cause? Well, it's in the following verse, and so, or not verse, but quote. So Monica, can you please read the quote that's following?
Per the National Catholic Reporter, about 10% of priests report a sexual approach from a priest while they were in training. David Hunt.
Okay, and that's the book. I forgot to bring it this time, but the woman rides the beast. It's priest, or so it's a hard word. It's not price.
Priest.
Yeah, so it's 10% of priests report a sexual approach from a priest while they were in training. So okay, there's the other thing. We have sex abuse of children, but that's not all. And that, unfortunately, that's often homosexual sex abuse, right? Because they're male priests taking advantage of who? Altar boys. They're not taking advantage of young girls so much. Maybe they do too, okay, but well, so celibacy encourages what? Homosexuality. And so the National Catholic Reporter is the main Catholic magazine in the United States. And as reported by David Hunt, that magazine itself says about 10% of priests report a sexual approach from an older priest, I guess, or mostly, while they were in training. I don't know if you saw the news recently. German priests and bishops are lobbying or saying they should be able to do gay marriages. Now we know that Rome and the Vatican is still, they're not there yet. But you have to say, those German priests and bishops are intellectually consistent if the Catholic Church is full of homosexuals, then how can they be against homosexual marriage? Right? So I don't know, I'm just saying that maybe those German priests and bishops are more honest than other priests and bishops. So I mean, it's a strange world we live in, very strange. Okay, so Jude, can you please read Revelation 17:18 in English?
18. And the woman which thou sawest is the great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth.
Ok, thank you. E a mulher que viste é a grande cidade que reina sobre os reis da terra. Okay, so that we already know that this is the verse which proves that the woman is in fact a city, or she's representative of a city. So let's go to Emily. Can you read Revelation 17:9, please?
And here is the line which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth.
Okay, thank you. And hopefully we're not going to be going back to these dark verses again. I think we're just about finished with them. So this is 17:9. Aqui o sentido que tem sabedoria. As 7 cabeças são 7 montes sobre os quais a mulher está assentada. So I included verse 18 before, just to make it clear that in verse 9, it's now the whore is now a city sitting on 7 hills. Okay, because remember back to verse 1, the woman, the great whore, is sitting on all the nations. So just so you know, things change, the perspective changes. We started as the great whore sitting on all the nations, and now we have the whore sitting on a city with 7 mountains. Okay, so let's go to, now we're going to continue on. We don't need to read verse 17:18 again because we just read that. But I want to ask, because it includes a very important characteristic, and that is the last part of that verse. And that is, it's a woman that reigneth over the kings of the earth. So let's go. So Monica, can you read question A in English, please?
Okay. What past, present, and potential future cities reigned over the kings of the earth?
Okay, so it's quite a long list, but what do you think? So go back in ancient history. So what would be the first city that was reigning over kings of the earth? What would you guess? Or name any, and we'll see how many we can guess. What do you think? You'll probably think of more that I've thought of.
Babylon.
Excellent. And even before Babylon, there's that Tower of Babel. So I guess, so the Tower of Babel and Babylon, there, you know, I don't know when it became Babylon from the Tower of Babel, but or if that was his name, but absolutely right. How about after that? So let's try to do it chronologically. So what was a city that was reigning over the kings of the earth? How about Jerusalem? Do you remember? I think it was under Solomon that the Queen of Sheba, right, from Ethiopia, is all these people were coming to pay tribute because Solomon was just the most incredible king in the world, and it was obvious to everyone. So he didn't reign exactly, but that but that gets close. So Jerusalem, for a time, was reigning over the kings of the earth. There might be, my ancient history isn't very good, maybe Sumeria. There's some other ancient civilizations, and if that's the capital, I don't know. But let's go forward. From Jerusalem, what might be the next city that seemed to reign over the kings of the earth? It's a big one. Rome.
Rome.
Yeah, okay. And then let's think after Rome, because, technically the Roman Vatican does not reign. They don't have direct control over kings or leaders in the world, or we don't believe they do. And that ended, I don't know, my history is not that good, but it's maybe, during the Renaissance. You can almost think that when Italy became independent, created a nation, I think that was 1871, they took back Rome. And so that was the end, perhaps, of Rome's, reigning over the kings of the earth, or at least the last kingdom. Coming up to the 20th century, what city perhaps tried to reign over the entire world and didn't actually, but it was a close thing. There was some real danger. How about Berlin? Okay, so Nazi Germany, they certainly reigned over a good part of the world for a while. And after Nazi Germany, who took that role? Nearly reigning over half the world? Moscow. Okay, so we're just thinking of cities where maybe they reigneth over many, many kings of the world. Now we get closer to home, at least for me. We have to say Washington, D.C., right? Washington, D.C. is, in too many ways, is reigning over many parts of the world, particularly now as its influence today is so evil, in my view. Some would say, where is the United Nations located? Where is their headquarters? New York. Okay, so the headquarters of the United Nations. And so, okay, maybe you can say then the city, New York, which is pretty powerful, right? It's the center of world finance still. And the United Nations, kind of in some ways rules over everything, or at least they want to. So that's another candidate. And there's maybe one more. Who right now is making a really good push to reigning over half or more and more of the world?
Iran?
Iran is a good one. Okay, that's like, Islamic terrorism. I hadn't thought of that one. So that would be, Tehran. So there's another capital where they're trying to reign over all of the world. And how about one last one? It's a place in a country always in the news these days.
I'm sitting down here.
How about Beijing?
Beijing.
Okay, so Beijing, China. Anyway, so there we are. So all of these are they're all candidates. But then let's go to Jude. Can you read question B in English, please?
Okay. Of those whose ruling has been most prolonged.
Okay, so there's a silent E there that you pronounce, so it's not ruly, it's rule.
Ruled.
Okay, and you pronounce the E, the silent E in the last ED of prolonged a little bit, so it's prolonged.
Is a rule is a rules?
Rule has several meanings in English. There's many English words that, depending on the context, there is the noun is like a rule or law. Okay, and then similar to rule, the verb is to dominate or instruct. Okay, but so here it's the noun whose rule. So it's kind of whose domination. Okay, who the length of their control. So
okay.
of all of those cities mentioned, whose domination was the most prolonged?
Rome and Babylon.
Yeah, yep. And I would, Babylon then is a good, I don't know how long that empire. It was a pretty long empire, but that was centuries probably of domination. But Rome is millennia, right? So that was like a long time, Rome. And in some ways, it's not ended. So let's go to Emily. Can you read question C, please, in English?
How did the Vatican Rome rule over kings?
Okay, so what do you think? So, you know, so we're looking back over more than 1,000 years of history in the Vatican and Rome. So how can a church, how can a church led by a pope rule over kings? I mean, that's crazy. How did they do it?
With money.
Okay, money certainly helped. They actually had armies. Okay, they had a military. So I guess the money was what funded it, but popes actually started and led wars with armies. Okay, but not just that. So that's one thing. So armies and money, but they had a very persuasive means to get a king or emperor to do what they wanted. Well, it's mentioned in the next quotation. So let's go there. So Monica, can you read that first quotation after question C, please?
Okay. Urban.
Yeah, the way to say that would be
8.
Urban the Eighth, because that's 8 in Roman numerals. And then
Yeah.
and then you go Urban the Eighth because it's plural or possessive at the end, and then go ahead.
Okay. 1,627.
And let me remember for years
16.
we tend to go exactly. So 1627 bull.
Okay. Excommunicates and curses all heretics and
That's a
schismatic.
hard one. Yes, it's schismatics.
Schismatics as well who favor of or defend them, including all princes and magistrates.
Very good.
This bull is still in force today.
Okay, very good. So that's from David Hunt. The Woman Rides the Beast, page 249. So we don't need to read the David Hunt. I include that for information. So there it is. So Urban the Eighth's 1627 bull says, or actually does, it excommunicates and curses all heretics and schismatics. Schismatics is create a schism, which is like divide. Okay, so schismatics is kind of a Catholic way to talk about people who don't agree with you. They're a schismatic. They're trying to divide the only church that should exist, right? So we're called schismatics. Well, and this wasn't just cursing people. It's saying all princes and magistrates. All right, so that the bull, which is the order from this pope, saying that he curses and excommunicates people, heretics, schismatics, including princes and magistrates. And as David Hunt pulls out, this bull is still in force today. Because remember, the popes are infallible, and anything they said over the last, 1,400 years, they can't be contradicted even by today's pope. So they're stuck with it. And so this is it. The pope could threaten or excommunicate a king or an emperor. And that king or emperor was like, don't do that. Because they believed that actually meant they would have to go to hell. Okay, so they believe that the church excommunicates you or curses you. That's really bad news. And so even kings and emperors would go, yes, sir, Mr. Pope, whatever you want. All right, so they were terrified of the possibility of being excommunicated. So let's look at the next quotation that supports this. So Ju, can you read the next quotation?
118th century historian counted 95 popes who claimed to have the divine power to depose kings.
Okay, so there we are. So this is just, we don't even want, there's so many popes and they're all so corrupt, but one historian in the 18th century, he counted, he went back and got all of their, sayings, and he counted 95 claimed to have divine power to depose kings. Okay, so that's a lot of popes over many, many centuries who said, I can do it when I want to. Okay, so, and remember, I don't know if you know, until 1994, until 1994, the president of Argentina had to be Roman Catholic. Okay, by law. Okay, so that was church and state like this. Well, if the president of Argentina was Roman Catholic, that meant that the Pope, until then, could tell the president of Argentina, if you don't do what I want you to do, you're going to hell. Okay, and if the president of Argentina was a good Catholic, he'd have to do what the Pope told him to do. Okay, so for instance, this was a serious question when John Kennedy, remember the golden boy, Lancelot, president of the United States, starting in 1960, Mr. Handsome John F. Kennedy, the first Catholic US president. It was a serious question saying, Mr. President, will you follow the US Constitution or will you follow what the Catholic Church tells you to do? Good question.
And,
okay.
The actual Pope is from Argentina.
I know, there you go. There you go. Okay, so, all right, so that's just to show, I'm just supporting that this is how Rome and the Vatican ruled over kings, and they still can do it in some ways. Okay, so let's move on to Emily. Can you read Revelation 17:6, please?
And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration.
Ok, thank you. E vi que a mulher estava embriagada do sangue dos santos e do sangue das testemunhas de Jesus. E vendo-a eu, maravilhei-me com grande admiração. Okay, so let's go directly to question D. So Monica, can you please read question D?
Okay. Through which institution did Rome become drunken?
Drunken.
Drunken, with the blood of the saints.
Okay, you remember?
Inquisition.
Absolutely right, Emily. Okay, so let's look at the next quote. And Innocent III reigned as Pope from 1198 to 1216. But so, Ju, can you please read that quote from Peter de Rosa?
Yes. Innocent III murdered far more Christians in one afternoon than any Roman Empire did in his entire reign.
Ouch. Okay, so Roman emperor. All right, so
Emperor.
not, yeah, who rules an empire, but the emperor. is the ruler. Okay, so he's actually referring, and this Peter de Rosa is an ex-priest. He's quoted in the David Hunt book, but he's talking about it was the massacre in Béziers, France, of over 20,000 Albigenses in one afternoon. And so Peter de Rosa is just lamenting and saying, in one afternoon, the Pope who ordered this killed more Christians than the Roman emperors did. Okay, sorry, Emily, go ahead.
The name of the Pope is actually Innocent III.
Yep.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, Pope Innocent III, okay, is the full way you would say it. Pope Innocent III. Okay, so this is just to say, all right, so we're looking, if in one afternoon, the Pope ordered the massacre of 20,000 people just in one town. Let's look at the next question. So the next question is, it's back to you, Emily. So can you read question, yes, please. Question E, please, Emily.
Estimates of Christians martyred reach how many?
Okay, so do you remember? And remember, no schools. I don't think any schools teach anymore this horrible part in history. Certainly no public schools in the US, or public schools even less in Brazil, will mention this, of how many Christians, real Christians, the Catholic Church killed. What do you think? Is the number, we already know 20,000. But that was one day in one city. So how many do you think in total they might have killed or martyred? It's in the millions, we believe. It's very hard it's very, very hard to know for an exact number, partly because the church wrote the history. The Catholic Church was in control of a lot of things at that time, and so the documents are not so easy to find. This is a incredible book called Fox's Book of Martyrs, and it actually was written by a Christian, by what we call in the States a Protestant, in the 16th century. So 1500s, John Fox started compiling, and it's a very sad book, 200, 300 pages, and it's there's not enough space to recount 1 million people killed, but you start getting a very full idea. He gives a paragraph or two of history, and he got that history back at the time, and gave the name of the person who was martyred, the reason why, any last words. And so it's a very compelling actual testimony, proof, if you will. And I don't think anyone counts. Maybe the book relates 10,000, I don't know how many, but it's absolutely devastating to read of the martyring of all those people, and the reason. And because they wouldn't bow to the Pope, they wouldn't worship Mary, they didn't believe Mary was a virgin, eternal virgin, they didn't believe in transubstantiation, which is saying that the wafer and the wine is the body and blood of Christ. So if they said, I don't believe that, the Bible doesn't say that, then they would be executed. Okay, so we're running a little late. So Monica, can you read the next sentence, please, or quote?
Okay. Making every allowance required by an historian and permitted to a Christian, we must rank the Inquisition along with the wars and persecutions of our time, as among the darkest blots on the record of mankind revealing ferocity unknown in any beast.
Okay,
Will
very good. So that's a lot of, it's a big sentence and with a lot of big words. So making every allowance,
allow us.
persecutions, and revealing a ferocity unknown in any beast. And just for you to, this is from Will Durant, writing The Story of Civilization, Volume 4. And Will Durant is a secular historian. He's not a Protestant, so he's not a Catholic basher. He's not, anti-Catholic. He's actually anti-God, but he's a very good historian. So he does not believe in God, but he relates the history honestly. And so he's saying, all right, you have to put the Inquisition along with the wars and persecutions of the 20th century. So, all right, we have communism, which has already massacred 100 million people, and Nazi Germany, which exterminated 6 million Jews and killed another 4, whatever, millions on top of that. Okay, but in terms of the most embarrassing thing in human history, the Inquisition is up at the top. Okay, so let's continue on, and we'll be finishing with this with sad subject. So Jude, can you read question F, please?
Why did the Inquisition burn martyrs at the stake?
Okay, so you saw that image I showed from one of the book covers of Fox's Book of Martyrs, and there are people up on the cross. Why? Because they're to be burned. So that's burning martyrs at the stake. So why did they burn people? Why not just kill them? Why not, an arrow or a sword?
Because they believed the people was from evil, from
Okay, that they were evil, like it had a demon. So maybe you need to burn the demon as well, right? That makes sense to me. But Emily, please read the next quotation from David Hunt.
Heretics were committed to the flames because the popes believed that the Bible forbade Christians to shed blood.
Okay, so it was according to David Hunt, and I think it's very well established. So that, the popes were evil. They were really anti-popes or antichrists. But they said, okay, the Bible says we can't, we're the Church of Christ. We can't like shed blood, but we can burn them. I mean, it's we laugh about it, but it's tragic. Now, of course, anyone who believes that they can kill someone else for their beliefs, do you think that person follows Christ?
No.
They shouldn't be called Christians at all, and they weren't. Okay, they were Catholics. Okay,
and
so
I remember watch some films in the past about this Inquisition, and when the people reveal some knowledge, and they are burned because or they are accused the people as witch or some
Yeah, it's just incredible. It's in the name of religion. But remember, religion is man created and always goes wrong. That's why we, as born again Christians, we do not believe in religion. We believe in a personal relationship with our Creator. So Monica, can you read the next quotation from David Hunt, please?
Okay. The Roman Catholic Church has been the greatest persecutor of both Jews and Christians the world has ever seen, and has martyred far more Christians than even pagan Rome or Islam. She was being excited only by Mao and Stalin, but they hardly claimed to be acting in Christ's name.
Okay, thank you. Very good. That's another long, good paragraph. So far more Christians than even pagan. I think you said Evan. So even. So the
Even.
E is more open. And then those two E's in the word exceeded means then it's not exceeded, it's exceeded only by Mao and Stalin. So what David Hunt is saying, it's very sad, is that the Roman Catholic Church has persecuted more Jews or killed more Jews and Christians than even pagan Rome or Islam has. And the only entities which killed more Jews or Christians would be Mao of Communist China and Stalin of the Communist Soviet Union. But here's the thing. They didn't claim to be acting in the name of Christ. Okay, so you see the hypocrisy is stupendous. It's mind-blowing to think that most Jews and Christians, maybe Mao and Stalin killed more than the Roman Catholic Church, but they never said that it was divine right, that they were led by God, that they were doing it, incredible. So let's go. So, Ju, can you please read question G?
Is the behavior ancient history?
Okay, so some would say, oh, the Inquisition, that's been over for a long time, so let's just move on. Let's all get together. Let's do an ecumenical movement, and we're all together against the atheists and the agnostics. So stop, splitting hairs, as we say in the United States. Okay, so it's like you have a hair and it's going, like to criticize the Catholic Church, you're splitting a hair. Maybe not. And maybe why God chose 2 full chapters in the book of Revelation on Mystery Babylon. Maybe this is not splitting hairs. Maybe this is important. So back to you, Emily. Can you read the next quotation from David Hunt after question G?
Yes. No less significant is that fact that the Church never excommunicated Hitler, Mussolini, Himmler, or any of the other key players in the Holocaust. They remained Catholics to the end under the shelter of the Mother Church.
Okay, ouch. So do you see what he's getting at? So it's not so ancient history. We can't say that the Catholic Church or the popes were responsible for what Hitler, Mussolini, and Himmler did, but we do know they did not criticize it. And they knew about it. The Vatican spies were very good. They had lots of Catholic priests and others in Germany, in Poland, telling them what was actually happening. And there were a few things, but generally no big criticism. And you look at this, Mussolini, Hitler, Himmler were all Catholics, and they were never excommunicated. Okay, so the Catholic Church was like, you know what? We don't want to rock the boat. These guys are too powerful. We have too many Catholics in Germany and Poland. We don't want to offend them. Okay, that sounds to me like really horrible, despicable, amoral behavior. So they're not conducting the Inquisition any longer, but they are still doing some very evil things. So let's finish with the last verse, or it's not, yes, it's the last quotation. So Monica, can you read the last quotation from David Hunt, please?
The reformer Martin Luther recognized the Catholic Church as the slaughterhouse of souls.
Okay, so it's sad but true. So Martin Luther, who's known as the first really public reformer or Protestant in protesting, he was a Catholic priest who got his hands on an Erasmus parallel Bible. All right, Erasmus made a Bible with with the real Greek. The Textus Receptus on one page, and on the other page was the corrupted Latin Vulgate from Jerome and used by the Catholic Church. And he looked at those, wait a second, something's wrong with the Latin. And the Latin translation was to favor always the Catholic, and he read that and said, that's why Martin Luther, he received information and he was able to think for himself and rebel. And so he said, the Catholic Church is the slaughterhouse of souls. Do you know what a slaughterhouse is?
A place where there is a lot of killing.
Exactly. So slaughter is to kill, and it's actually slaughterhouse. We don't use that for humans often. It's actually where you take cattle to. So it's where animals are slaughtered in order to get their meat. Okay, so that's a slaughterhouse. So very, very bloody, very graphic, continuous. And so Martin Luther, who belonged to the Catholic Church for most of his life, said they are the slaughterhouse of souls. So, okay, so we're going to end there. We've gone almost an hour. I'm just going to leave a teaser. Maybe there's one characteristic, an important characteristic that we overlooked about, the great city or the great whore. We went over many of these defining characteristics that all lead us to believe it's Rome. Is there one other thing that we've missed? I'll leave this as a teaser for next time. Well, Mystery Babylon is not a man. Okay, Mystery Babylon is a woman. And that's why David Hunt titles the book, A Woman Rides the Beast. And so we'll think about this before next class. Well, why is that important, and how is that connected to Roman Catholicism? Okay, why might that be important? Okay, so any questions or comments on tonight's study? And we're moving away now from all of these very dark things. We're going to be now getting into quickly the destruction of Mystery Babylon. Okay, so the good news is coming. But any questions or comments on what we discussed tonight?
I have a quick comment. Mom and I were watching this afternoon that movie that we watched many years ago, but now we're seeing it again, from Martin Luther. And it tells like the history of the Reformation. It's really nice to see. And it really shows how they used fear to remain the control over people.
Wow.
It's really sad, but it's a really great movie.
Wow, I think there's I've seen one myself. I think there are several portraits on Martin Luther, but
okay.
but let me know which one it was. Maybe I think I've seen that as well. But it's very inspiring. It's very inspiring, right?
I think it's an older one.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. And I've seen an older one too. Remember, you don't want to see a modern movie about a biblical figure. Did anyone see, was it called, it was a movie about Noah's Ark. It had another name, and it was modern and ridiculous. I mean, it was like so completely unbiblical. So the movie was supposed to be about Noah, and it was just tore apart the actual story to make its very evil points. So yeah, if it's a religious, quote unquote, religious subject, you don't want a modern movie. You have to go back to 1960 or before to have an honest movie, is my personal opinion. So any other questions or comments? Okay, then well, thank you. It's a dark material, but we're moving away because Revelation goes through lots of darkness, the tribulation period, but specifically, but it ends with incredible hope. So with that, we'll stop.